Welcome everyone to the Friday afternoon webinar. It's the first week of September already. I cannot believe it. Debbie McRae is joining me. If you haven't already witnessed her work, she is fabulous at supporting partners in particular, but really anyone in this journey, couples and the added partner as well. But her focus is often what's coming into her office for betrayed partners. And I know you've got more for us today. What do you have?
Hi, well, thank you. You're right. I am bringing to this webinar situations that have come up recently with clients that I'm working with. So today we are going to talk in this webinar about a therapeutic or a healing separation and how it really can be a very effective intervention for couples struggling with the impact of betrayal and addiction. We're going to talk about how this therapeutic healing separation is structured and how it's a compassionate approach to help both individuals regain safety, clarity, and hope in the relationship. So we're going to explore what a therapeutic healing separation actually is, some steps in how you actually do the intervention, how it differs from a traditional separation, and what to expect when you are actually taking part in a healing therapeutic separation. We're going to discuss when it's appropriate to do it, and how each partner takes time for meaningful personal and relational growth. So here's what I see. First situation is the couple coming in and sharing that there is constant conflict, and the conflict continues to escalate and neither party can regulate. And this happens week after week after week, and there's no forward progress. They're stuck. Second situation is the betrayed partner is in a constant state of emotional dysregulation. They cannot regulate, and it's starting to take a big toll on their mental, physical, and emotional health. Another reason that I have seen is that the betraying partner refuses or is extremely resistant to doing recovery work. And so the betrayed partner feels like they have to step back because they are so consumed by the outcome and wanting to get that betraying partner to do their work. So how do you know if you should consider a therapeutic separation? I'm going to go over a list, but I want you to also keep in mind, and here's my disclaimer, and that is you need to use the help of a qualified therapist to determine if a therapeutic or healing separation is right for your relationship, if it will actually be advantageous and help the relationship heal. You do not do a therapeutic healing separation alone. So here's some things to consider. There's 10 items I have on my list. The first one is that if either person does not feel safe emotionally or physically, and we need to take a time out through a healing separation to reset and to create the safety. The second reason is, like I've already mentioned, if conflict continues to escalate, despite both partners trying to do their work and they just can't get out of that relational conflict. The third reason is that the betrayed partner carries the burden of chronically monitoring the addict partner while their betraying partner is avoiding all accountability. So we're stuck in this cycle of one person doing all the work. The fourth reason is maybe there's been a big breach of inner circle boundaries. So it could be recent, it could be repeated, and therefore the betrayed partner needs to take a step back to work on their own healing. The fifth reason is that the betrayed partner feels like their nervous system is constantly on high alert. And like I mentioned previously, it's starting to really affect their mental, physical, and emotional health. And so it's getting to a crisis point. The sixth reason is that maybe the family dynamic is suffering from so much tension and chaos. And rather than staying together, we need to take a little bit of time apart to help things settle down so it's not adversely affecting children that might be in the home. The next reason is that the betrayed partner resists or refuses to do their recovery work or to seek the type of specialized treatment that they need. They are not willing to do any recovery work at all. The next one is if either person, the betrayed partner, Specifically, I see this most often with them is considering leaving but feels too dysregulated to decide. We need to get grounded. We need to work with our therapist to determine the reasons for staying, the reasons for going. The ninth reason is that the betrayed partners need space to heal because they're constantly being re-injured emotionally and mentally. And then the last reason is that the couple need a structured plan with time apart so that they can heal more effectively. Maybe they're just not able to do it together. So if you answered yes to several of these, take that in and discuss this with your therapist and explore if a therapeutic healing separation might offer you the clarity, the safety, and the structure that you both need for healing. So let's define what a therapeutic separation is and its purpose. A therapeutic separation is very intentional, it is temporary, and it is a very structured time spent apart. So it's aimed at creating stability, safety, and it gives each individual time to gain some insight on how they've been impacted by their addiction and their betrayal. Couples work with a support system. As I mentioned previously, you have to have a therapist to help you with this. As you define clear goals and you understand the purpose of the therapeutic separation, it becomes a roadmap for healing. A therapeutic separation is simply just not a break. It is, like I said, clearly defined. We're going to put an agreement together because if we just decide to separate and we don't have this boundary in place, then it's more likely it's the next step to the dissolution of the relationship. So note that in a traditional separation, it's often very impulsive, it's very emotionally charged, and it's very unstructured. So there's a higher likelihood of it leading towards divorce. Whereas a therapeutic separation seeks to resolve conflict and foster growth. It creates that emotional and physical safety, and it reduces chaos and gives both partners space to process their pain. So it's a really great opportunity to step back and evaluate the relationship outside of the constant crisis. So in order to make it extremely effective and for it to be healing, there has to be a plan put in place. So a successful plan is intentional and it is written down. So I'm going to go through some of the areas that when I help a couple do a therapeutic separation, these are the things that we go over. This becomes a document with each person having a copy of the therapeutic separation plan, and they both sign it. So this becomes our roadmap for healing. So the first thing we have to do is sit down as a couple with the help of the therapist and define what are the clear goals, what are the objectives, the overall objectives that we want to meet for this therapeutic separation. So as I've mentioned, we want to provide the time and the space outside of the relationship so that each individual can focus on their own necessary personal, social, spiritual, and emotional growth. Also, during the separation, each individual is going to start to identify their own individual needs, as well as the needs they have within the relationship itself. The therapeutic separation provides a healing environment so we can emotionally regulate, we can get grounded, and we step out of being in hypoarousal. We're connecting to prefrontal cortex. And as a result, then we have the ability, when we're nice and grounded and we're focusing on our needs, to identify what boundaries do I need to put in place, either for myself to follow those internal boundaries or the external boundaries that I need my partner to follow to create safety within this relationship. The next one is we want to get out of the drama triangle. Oftentimes, we do a therapeutic separation to get out of all the drama, to lessen the trauma, and to create more safety in the relationships. And also, time apart gives each individual the time to take on responsibility for their own individual health, their own recovery, their own healing, their own well-being. So those are just some really overall general goals that we have and reasons we do the therapeutic separation. I will often then also have couples, after we go through some of those basic goals, we also add individual goals, goals that the couple would like to add as part of their therapeutic separation. Then the next thing we talk about is number 2, is we establish a timeline. So typically a therapeutic separation is going to be anywhere from 2 to 6 months. I've seen it typically 2 to 3 months. And so we have to determine, what is the length of the separation going to be? What is the begin date and what is the end date? And then along the way, what is the plan for checking in on the progress? So it's clearly defined, when it starts and when it ends. The next thing we work on then is we've got to focus on what each person will be doing while this therapeutic and healing separation is taking place. So both parties must engage in going to therapy. So for the addict partner, they're going to really pursue their recovery plan. They're going to go to their meetings. They're going to be working with their sponsor, their accountability partner. They're doing disclosure preparation if necessary. They are getting into good, strong recovery. The betrayed partner during this time is going to focus on stabilization. So this could include their nervous system becoming more regulated. It could be getting into a support group, identifying their boundaries that they need for safety, and of course, it always includes self-care. Both individuals need to focus on personal growth experiences. So there's an agreement within the therapeutic separation document that they each agree to do individual counseling, and if you're going to be doing couples counseling, what that looks like. Some of those personal growth experiences will include things like doing maybe your workbooks from the support group that you are attending. It could be doing the 12 steps. It could be journaling, exercising. A lot of it is about the self-care piece that we stress so much in healing and recovery. So both agree that while this time spent apart, is for healing, that a part of that healing is going to be that they will take specific steps and they are committing to it. Then the next step, the 4th step, is we have to really get into the logistics. So we've got to clearly define the boundaries for therapeutic separation. So one of the things we talk about, and I'm not doing this in any particular order right now, but things to really consider and get clarity on include communication. How are you going to communicate? Are you going to do it via text, email, in person, on the phone? How often? Are there certain topics that are off limits? Certain topics that are allowed? So we want to have clarity on that. And again, when we put structure around how we're going to communicate, we're helping support the couple in staying regulated when they interact. If there are children involved, then the next thing that needs to be discussed is some type of a parenting plan. We determine who's going to be in the house, who's going to be out of the house. And so a side note, there are some couples that choose to do in-house separations. It is a little more tricky because we have to get a lot of clarity on what space you're going to take up and when, and how you're going to spend time together in the same areas, and also when you're going to be taking care of the children, whether you're trading off or doing it together. If the partner, one of the partners, is outside of the home, and typically I find that it is the betraying partner who goes someplace safe to stay during the therapeutic separation, then we have to create a schedule for being with the children. What's the access? Who's making the decisions? Are we going to spend time one-on-one with the children, or are we going to do it as a family? And if so, what does that look like? What days of the week, what times of the day? We get very, very specific on that. Another area that we really have to focus in on, because this creates a lot of safety and security, especially for the betrayed partner, is the financial obligations, the agreements. So who's going to take care of paying the rent or the mortgage and the utilities? And who's going to provide the money for what? And are we going to have spending transparency, which is very, very important. So we've got to go through all the financial aspects that are going to take place during this time apart. Then, like I mentioned, we're going to focus on the recovery and healing tasks. And so that is part of what I just spoke about in what is my work I'm going to be doing while I'm separated and focusing on my own recovery and healing. You might want to put boundaries in place around technology and transparency. So devices and filters stay on. Who are the accountability persons that you're going to report to? What are you going to do and what information are you going to provide? Even though we're not living under the same roof, we're in the same area in the house, we still want transparency. We still want safety and safeguards put into place. Another one is the relational boundaries. So what kind of time are you going to spend together? Will you be going into couples therapy? Are you going to discuss the hard issues when you're there in couples? Are you going to date? Is there going to be any physical contact, any sexual contact? And we want to get very, very clear on that. Another area is the relationships and involvements outside of the primary relationship. So who's the support system going to be for each person? What important friends and family will be there to support each one of you? And of course, it's very important that during this time that there's an agreement to remain emotionally monogamous, to remain sexually monogamous, if the goal of a therapeutic healing separation is to repair the relationship. That is very, very important. Another thing to consider is what if there is a relapse or what if there is a crisis? Who, when, and how are we going to notify? And what are the steps we're going to take? Do we need to create a safety plan for each other and to make sure that we have the resources lined up and in place for that? Then the next thing, and that should be a part of a healing therapeutic separation, is really having a good plan on who the therapist or therapists are that are going to support you. You need to work with a therapist that's experienced in betrayal trauma and sex and porn addiction. They're going to help you write the plan, monitor the progress, and then adjust it as you need to adjust it. The therapist will also help you review the dates, right? We're going to decide along the way, we're going to do check-ins and how we're doing. And the therapist will help you determine or decide if it's time to end and come and reunify and come back together, or if we need to extend the therapeutic separation a little bit longer. So in doing a therapeutic healing separation, there's going to be a lot of fears that come up. So I want to address just a few of those because it is really difficult. So one of the common fears that I hear from the betrayed partners is, well, if we separate, won't they relapse, right? Won't they go back into their addiction? For the betraying partners, it's, well, if we separate, then won't my partner just leave? Because this is a formal therapeutic healing separation, each partner commits to working on recovery, and that includes recovery within the relationship. So if there's a lack of effort or there is relapse during this time, that is revealing information that the betrayed partner needs to take into consideration. Another fear that I hear come up is, well, if we separate, does that mean the end of the relationship? And the answer to that is a therapeutic relationship where both partners are fully committed to doing their recovery and each honors the commitments, they honor the structure of the therapeutic separation. And again, like I said, they're focusing on doing their own work and having their own support system. It doesn't mean the end of the relationship. It can be a very healthy, very profound reset in the relationship. Another question I hear is, gosh, if we do a therapeutic separation, isn't that a sign that I'm just giving up? Well, no, it's not. Sometimes the hardest thing you have to do is to step back and take 2 or 3 months to get out of the chaos and out of the drama and to focus on what you need and on your own self-care and your own emotional regulation. So it really is an act of self-respect to step out and give yourself a chance to heal and to get emotionally regulated so you can make really grounded decisions. Sometimes I see that a therapeutic separation is one of the best steps in giving each person and the relationship the opportunity to heal, as hard as it is. So how do you manage once you decide to do it, it's in place? Well, even well-planned separations are very emotional. So some ideas to consider when you're navigating this plan is really stay committed to the plan. Each person needs to have their own copy of the therapeutic separation. And then review that written agreement, especially when all of a sudden emotions spike, fear sets in. Go back and review the plan and stick to the plan. Remember, the plan includes people that you can turn to for support when it gets difficult, which leads to the second part, which is make sure you have a support system. So, safe friends, support groups, therapist guided check-ins. So periodically, you might go in and do a couple session throughout this time to see where you're at. Really embrace your personal growth. So do your journaling, practice your skills for emotional regulation and for recovery, and focus on small weekly goals so that you are focusing and bringing the attention back to yourself and your own progress. And then, of course, we have to be open to the outcomes. Remember, the aim is clarity and well-being. That's what we're really focusing on is I'm going to get to a better place because I'm choosing to do this therapeutic healing separation. And I'm not going to force a particular result, which is what we want to do. Now, a big part of a healing therapeutic separation is that loneliness can happen. We can be triggered. So it's really important that you have your own individual plan. And that comes from building a daily ritual and those types of regulation skills and tools that will help you when you're lonely. So it's going to be breath work. It's going to be exercise. It could be mindfulness and meditation. It could be journaling. So come up with your own routine that will help you emotionally regulate. I like the idea of maybe even using the 3-circle plan. I've talked about this and we can adapt it in so many ways, but maybe in the inner circle, the red circle, you're going to write those things that cause you to get triggered and emotionally dysregulate. So you know when to recognize when you need to stop and you need to step into the yellow circle, which is going to be identifying and naming the need that's not being met. And that's why you've become triggered and dysregulated. And then the outer circle, the green circle, is the steps you're going to take to get grounded, to get those needs met, and to regulate. So plan ahead. Maybe sit down as you're doing this and things are coming up and write this out so you recognize it when it happens. And then if the addict partner happens to have a relapse, then there should be a clear steps and boundaries put into place to follow a certain protocol so that both receive therapeutic support. That's very, very important. Healing therapeutic separations are difficult. They can be very healing if they are done appropriately and if both are truly committed. So a therapeutic separation is purposeful, it's written down, it's guided. This is not about punishment. This is not about being avoidant. It's about restoring safety, and it's about promoting clarity on what both need for healing and for emotional regulation. So if you're thinking, maybe we do need to consider a healing therapeutic separation, then schedule a session with your therapist or your couples therapist and have that dialogue, have that conversation. If you then move into doing a therapeutic healing separation, make sure that you've got a therapist who knows how to assist you and guiding you through putting the plan together. You'll both want to have a copy of that plan. Like I said, it should be signed. Then you're going to put together your own personal growth and self-care plan, and then get your support people in place. So, like I said, oftentimes we get caught in such a negative cycle within a relationship where there's betrayal and there's addiction that a very, very helpful therapeutic tool is a healing separation. I prefer to call it a healing separation. It's also referred to as a therapeutic separation. I do see that it can be very, very powerful in helping couples reset and continue on in a healthier way in their own personal growth and their recovery. So that's what I have for today.
Great stuff. I've got a question for you, and we would welcome questions about this topic or anything else about this journey. But would you include in the plan like who we tell and what we say to others? Because I'm thinking that managing that message and making sure we're unified about that, could be part of the plan as we're separating.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I think we have to, and again, this document is kind of work in progress, and it might take a couple of times meeting with a therapist to put it in place, but I absolutely agree. We need to be on the same page as to why we are doing the therapeutic separation, and then how we're going to verbalize it to other people, who we're going to tell, how we explain it if we're living apart, and we want to, again, be on the same page. What's going to happen if one person goes out and starts sharing all sorts of details, it's going to create mistrust in the other individual. So it's going to actually have the opposite effect of what you're trying to accomplish with the healing therapeutic separation, which is getting the relationship grounded and regulated and on the path of healing. So absolutely, we have to be very clear on how we're going to word it, who we're going to share it with, and who we're not going to share it with.
I love that you started off with this is a compassionate, experience. And I really do believe that it is. And if people are focused on that, it isn't punishment. You have to leave, like we are taking this pause so we can figure things out. The level of dysregulation, when people, I was talking to somebody earlier today and like they know what to do. They're like, we have an agreement and we keep doing like they keep doing exactly
Mm-hmm.
you know what isn't helpful, and they both own that it isn't helpful, but we just get to this point and I was like, yeah. And I was thinking, oh yeah, if we're taking a pause and and if you can't learn to do that within the relationship within the home, then it may be we need to do this in a different way. I agree with you too. The in-home separation is extra challenging, and but when there's kids involved, it often is can be the right solution. But I have heard, and I know you have, 1,000 people say, we're separated. Is there a plan? What is the goals? How long are you, and people can be separated for years. And then I'm just going, then you're just separated, And so and nothing's really changing. I also really want to focus in on, you talked about the fears, but all of this is scary, but I can't help but think the scariest thing is getting stuck in this spot where it's, where you're dysregulated, you're in chaos, you're in crisis, you're not moving forward. No one's happy. I mean, it's just that, and I know it's known and it's in that moment, but at some point just like taking like advocate. I love that you talked about boundaries, including internal, and like advocating. I'm advocating for myself. I'm advocating for the relationship. And if both people are willing to do this, it can be transformative. And but I agree. And I did there's a workbook now for therapeutic separation, and I caught myself. They were talking about, even if they take sex addiction out of the arena, when couples are, out of alignment and separate, there isn't good stuff on how to do this on any level. So coming with these, here's when to consider it, here's what to consider, here's what a document would look like, then you have a plan. But I think also having both people agree to it, so that somebody's not going, well, you made me do this. We negotiated this, we had support, and this is what it is. But it's also data. If somebody's feeling slighted or whatever, that's information. So what you talked about, the key is both of us being willing to do our work, not perfectly, but being willing to do the work so that we're moving towards a goal of healing for the relationship so that we can not be separated. So
Can I add a little bit? I want to
please.
go back around to what you said, and that is that stuck piece. Understand that when we are doing a healing therapeutic separation, right, it is because there is an element of being stuck. It's not that recovery and healing is difficult because it is, right? But when we're stuck in negative patterns that are destructive to the relationship or destructive and adversely affect our emotional, physical, and mental health. So I'm talking about, right, repeated, right, patterns that we're stuck in, and they're not healthy patterns. And sometimes this is the only way. If you look at all the people I've worked with over the years, not that many people do a therapeutic healing separation, right? And so statistically, it's pretty low. And so I don't want somebody listening to this, podcast today going, well, yeah, I have this, and this in my relationship. Maybe we need to do a therapeutic healing separation. Well, you've got to take into consideration and ask yourself, are you stuck? Are you stuck in the drama triangle? Are you stuck in not doing your recovery and moving forward? Are you stuck in constantly being dysregulated? And it has such an adverse effect on you and the relationship, and there's no chance of moving forward without doing kind of a reset. And so a healing therapeutic separation really is a carefully guided, compassionate reset to the relationship. So
Yeah, and I hear so often, and particularly with betrayed partners, that there are physical manifestations of the trauma. There are autoimmune issues and I mean chronic medical conditions. And I can't help but think, you know, I'm not a doctor. I don't know if it was caused, but I know for sure that that level of stress and chaos is nothing but toxic for someone who's got other, conditions. So taking that pause and being able to let everything settle down, being able to get your thinking brain back online, having support, can I mean just eh, be healing on an individual level, but also give space for, being able to move forward and towards, each other. So
yeah,
so
yeah.
so we really would love questions, but I mean we can talk, trust me, we can talk. So yeah, but it's so with you said the 2 to 6 months.
Mhm.
Um, so say somebody says 2 months, and then let's play this out. Okay, something's not, we're not meeting goals, somebody relapses or whatever. Do you find that you're renegotiating that date or that end date? Okay.
Yeah, we will. And like I said, if along the way you need to be doing check-ins with a therapist, right? We're coming together. There are some couples that will spend the first few weeks really separate, not doing a whole lot of contact,
Mm,
minimal contact. And so we need to create a safe space for them to come to check in to see how each other is doing. And then if you see if somebody's not, doing they're part of the agreement, right? Then you've got the therapist there to help them and understand why they're not and help them to get back on to the plan. And so, yeah, sometimes we might say, okay, the betrayed partner might not be ready and might need another 30 days. So let's go 30 days and let's check in and see if it's time, for reunification then. And then we have to have a plan put in place as well. I didn't even talk about that.
I was going to ask you, that was
Yeah.
my next question of like, what is the plan? Like, it isn't just like magically, hey, and somebody raised their hand. Please type your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. This is recorded, so we want to, hold your privacy, but we would love your questions in the Q&A. Okay,
Yeah.
so
And so we don't talk about reunification and what that looks like, right? And it might be just spending more time together throughout the week, especially if you've got children and doing more childcare. That might be spending weekends together. Still spending a few of the weekdays apart and then slowly building until we're back together. And I know that financially, that's another consideration as well. So I don't want to just brush over that. And sometimes that determines how long a separation can be. Because we do need to find a place for whoever is stepping out of the home. It's got to be a safe space, especially if you're in addiction recovery, right? We want them to be in a supportive environment where it supports their recovery. And so I realize there's a lot of factors to this that it can be very difficult.
have you seen it? And we do have questions, but have you seen it where like someone says, we're going to do this for 6 months and like goals are met so that they're able to shorten the time? Or like, is that, I mean, I don't know.
My
True.
my my personal experience is that couples typically start with 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
They don't necessarily start with 6 months. That
Okay.
feels too long, especially
Okay.
I find to the betrayed partner. It's like, so we start with 2 to 3 months. If I had a couple I mean, I've even had couples come to me after the fact. I haven't worked with them and they come in saying, yeah, we've been separated. We were separated for a year. Well, did you have a therapeutic, separation document put into place? Well, no, we just separated. Okay, that's different because we're not doing recovery work as part of that type of an agreement, separation agreement. So I typically like to start with 2, 3 months and start there. I would rather add on than start 6 months out and it feels so big and so vast.
And that makes sense to me. And you can also go, well, we're making really good progress, but adding, another month makes sense because then we can achieve these goals. So, I can see that. But I have heard, more than I mean, like 3 years. I've heard 3 years we've been separated. And I'm like, and what is the plan? And there is no plan, in place for either a permanent separation, divorce, or coming back together. So I was like, okay, so you guys are both, in this in between spot with nothing really shifting. And again, no judgment, zero judgment if it's working for someone, but I'm also going, it's kind of it's kind of a situation where, is that what you really would choose in this relationship? Because if it is, great, but if you were together, I'm thinking at some point you would want to be together again. So
Mhm.
okay. So how did the therapeutic separation end? We've been separated since October. We are reconnecting, i.e. sharing space, spending more time, date nights, etc., but haven't reunified.
Um, well, I'll circle back around a few of the things we said. It might be spending weekends together to see how that goes. But then again, determining when they do come back into your home, again, what are the boundaries that you need as a betrayed partner around physical touch, right? Physical space. Do we need to sleep in separate rooms at first? So we're feeling like at least I have my own spot in the home where I can go and be regulated prior to just kind of jumping back into the same physical personal space together. I think all of those things need to be determined. And I think it's just stepping in. You're already doing some really wonderful things, that you're sharing space and spending more time and date nights together. That is a great way. You're already on the right steps. I would also encourage you that you are working with your couples therapist and doing it under their guidance as well, because then that's a great space if things aren't going the best, right? When we're trying something in this reunification, then we can talk it out with the help of somebody else. And oftentimes it's just that we both have different perceptions. And when we share them and we start to understand each other, then there really isn't, the conflict we thought there was. We can work on that. So, and again, it's got to be very intentional, determined. And if you take a step into spending more and more time together, and all of a sudden you find either one of you are struggling, be willing to talk about that, be open about that. And if you need to go step back to the last level you were at and coming back together, it's okay to do that. Right? But we got to talk about it. We've got to have somebody there to support you. There is no right or wrong way to do it.
So I have a question for you, like, because I could see two things happening. One is someone comes back into the home and everything goes back, like we just kind of fall back into our same patterns, and I could see that being really easy, or it being super awkward because like you've been like you don't know how to act. So thoughts on either of those?
Again, I still think there's so much value in getting into a couples therapist office to discuss that. And so you're right, it could be awkward. So get in with a therapist office and talk about what's the awkwardness, what specifically makes you awkward. Okay, how can we do that so it's less awkward? It could be everything from changing your clothing in front of each other. That's
Mm.
when it comes up, right? Okay, how are we going to do that? Is it okay while we're coming back together, right? That you can go into the bathroom and lock the door to change because that's what you need in order to feel safe, right? It is going to be scary when you come back together. I mean, you're human. You want this to work. That's very, very normal. But again, I find that a lot of couples can't do this alone. We need that third person supporting us because we only know what we know. And sometimes we need somebody else to kind of give us other ideas, right? Or to say it to us so we can understand it. So that's why I think a therapist is so valuable in the reunification process.
I agree. And I think also getting caught up in the fears, or the story I'm telling myself about something, and so having the safe space to voice all of those things and navigate it, is really key. Okay, what if betrayer is sober but isn't interested in work group? I'm reminding them to register and bugging them. Do I just back off? I'm going to register for betrayed partner group if it's not too late. Our group steps beyond being sober. So here's one for you, and I'm going to go pull the link, but Debbie's doing another boundaries work group, starting this month. And I can't help but think that that could be a perfect fit for you, regardless of what he's doing or not doing. I'm saying he. But Debbie, what are your thoughts? I'm going to go pull that right now.
Well, I want to just lay a foundation by talking about the difference between sobriety and recovery. And
Thank you.
so the person who asked the question, kind of check in and see what your situation is. So when I am sober, I am no longer acting out. I see that as, I'm kind of white knuckling it, right? I am just doing my best to just get by and I don't act out. When we have recovery, recovery really is a lifestyle change. It's about getting really into what are the tools and skills I can use, right, to help me maintain sobriety. Because then that way, chances of having that sobriety is far greater when I've got self-care, when I've got work groups that support me, where I'm learning about addiction, where I'm meeting with other people who have the same struggles and they're helping me see things in a different way, or maybe they're even, enlightening me as to maybe some of the things I'm not doing, that it really is recovery. It is very much it's a more multi-level approach when we're in recovery, right? We're working on our mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, relational parts of ourself. And so what I'm hearing you say is, gosh, I am bugging him, please take this next step because I want you to maintain this sobriety. As a betrayed partner, I am more emotionally regulated if I know my partner is doing recovery work that is supporting his sobriety. And you're right, you can only say it so much. You can only say it so much, and that's very, very hard. I'm not sure what kind of conversations you've had with your partner, but I like making it win-win. And if they are willing to do a work group, right, the win-win for them is that you as the betrayed partner is going to feel more safe and secure, and you're going to be more likely to move towards them to connect in whatever way that is. Maybe it's going out and doing fun things. Maybe it's conversation. Maybe it's living in the same space. Maybe it's, physical intimacy or whatever feels safe for you. And that's the win-win part. You didn't say if they've got a therapist they're going to. And sometimes, I'll have clients bring in their partners and we'll talk about what the betrayed partner needs for safety. And for you in this case, it sounds like safety is, gosh, I need you to get into work groups who really understand what you're dealing with in your addiction. And the more you understand it, then the safer I feel. And the safer I feel, the more I want to move towards you. And so you're right. There is a point where, right, if he's not willing to do it, then you have to back off and take care of you and find the support you need. So I encourage you to get into a group so you've got people that will help you work through this and figure out how to manage your own emotions around this. I do find sometimes that when the betrayed partner steps back and stops and starts focusing on themselves and they're moving forward, all of a sudden the addict partner goes, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Wow, they're moving, they're moving, they're moving away from me because they're working so hard. Maybe I need to look in doing something. So does it always happen that way? No, it doesn't. But chances are, greater that if you focus on you and do your recovery and you stop trying to get them to do what you need them to do to create the safety, then they might choose to do it themselves. I always look at two things when we are working in recovery. I look at capacity, which is skills and tools, and the other one is willingness. So the willingness part is I'm going to do whatever it takes to do recovery. There is no resistance. Okay. Capacity is skills and tools. Having the tools, we can learn those. That's easy. I can work with clients who have low capacity, right? I can give them all sorts of skills and tools and guide them and coach them. But the willingness piece is really hard. And so maybe you're dealing with somebody who just doesn't have the willingness yet to fully step in. And so if that's the case, it's like Tammy said earlier, that's evidence for you to consider.
So I pulled both the betrayed partner work group starts on the 10th of this month, and then Debbie's starts on the 30th. And both of those links are directly in the chat. So, and there is room in both of those. Um, and I was too wondering because he said he's sober. And I'm like, sober is I'm actually working on stuff. Abstinence is just not doing the things we weren't supposed to be doing in the first place. And we don't get a gold star for that. And we don't change, and I often say nothing changes if nothing changes. So you focusing on you, that is the one thing you do have, some control over. You don't have control over him. I am a big 12-step fan. I went to my 12-step meeting last night, and guess what? One of the topics was willingness. We talked about that, and people who are willing to do the work, we're gonna do the work because we want to change, we want to grow, we want to live differently. I feel bad for addicts who choose not to do the work, that are not acting out, because if that's our maladaptive coping mechanism, we're not doing that, but we're also not getting all the benefits of living in recovery. We're in the worst possible place. And of course, then we make everybody else miserable around us too. So, but I beg you, yes, focus on you. He's going to do or not do. You've shared options and resources, but I love what Debbie said too. It's like, it would help me build trust. I would love to, I vision us being able to be together and on a different path, and I'm going to do the work I need to do, I'm hopeful that you will choose to do that too. And then go take care of you. I'm glad you're here. I will also put, Debbie has a zillion, that's not true, webinars on our site, and there's lots of other great resources as well. We talk about so many different things. So I'm glad you're here. There, that's easy. But if he has no accountability, he's not working with a qualified professional, he's not doing 12 steps, he's not doing our drop-in groups, he's not in a work group, then he's just merely not acting out in that way. Often there's other co-occurring, whether it's food or gaming or gambling or zoning out on TV, whatever, that is the new escape hatch. Take care of you. All of that is data for you. Okay. I'm a betrayed partner with chronic health issues, and I have noticed that my qualifier intentionally gaslights me to keep me dysregulated when I'm making progress. I have stopped monitoring internet use and don't ask as many questions about his acting out. Would an in-home healing separation help with its efforts to sabotage my growth? If so, what guidelines would you recommend?
So I'm hoping that you have a therapist because I'm going to recommend some ideas that you take into your therapist because I'm just going to give you some ideas. Yes, I do think that an in-home healing separation would be very, very helpful if you need that. And so, what we're going to think about is creating a healing space within your home where you can go to, especially in those moments and times when you're being gaslit. And then you're moving into being dysregulated. And then it's stressing your entire system, including your immune system. And when we have chronic health issues, and a lot of betrayed partners I find have autoimmune issues of all sorts of types, then you need to be able to, right, set that boundary and put a stop to the conversation, and then find that space within your home where you are safe. One of the things too is that your betraying partner needs to honor those boundaries. So if you're doing an in-home separation, right, and you've got separate rooms and those rooms are off limits to each other, right, and we've determined how we're going to talk to each other and what conversations we're going to have. And I've had some partners who do in-home separations where they use the kitchen at different times. I mean, they have determined all sorts of the different spaces in the house as to who goes where when. And so we have to be very careful that if we are doing that separation, that both persons honor it. So again, I would recommend that you meet with a therapist, with the two of you. Focus on it being about your health, especially, and creating the safety that you need so you can focus on those chronic health issues, because our health is everything. I'm just going to say that. And I know that when I went through my betrayal trauma, my physical health took a huge hit. I was sicker during those years than I've ever been before. And so creating that space where you can, rest and renew, and decreasing the stress that can happen as you're interacting. I mean, all of that is going to help support your physical health.
So I have a question for you though. I mean, if he's intentionally doing things to dysregulate, and one of the things I think I heard you say is both parties need to be willing to do this and to do it for the purposes of healing and moving forward. So can you do an in-home healing separation, in an environment where one party is going like, yep, no, I'm gonna ignore all the rules.
Yeah, well, and that would be one of the things that I would consider, that if they're not willing to honor the guidelines put into place for an in-home separation, then the next step would be that you're going to consider a out-of-house separation so that the other individual leaves and you can create that safety. And so I'm happy to hear that you've stopped monitoring the internet use and you don't ask as many questions, because my guess is in doing that, right, it puts you right back into that cycle of being triggered and, right, emotionally dysregulated, along with him gaslighting you. So that's hard, and that's good work that you're doing there. But yes, you might say, in putting this in place, let's try this for 2 months so I can focus on my health. And if your betraying partner chooses not to honor those guidelines, then let them know that the next step would be, right, an out of house separation. And so that's where how I would verbalize it.
And it is really challenging, and I'm so glad you're advocating for yourself, and
Yes.
I'm glad you're here. So, and I like this is what we can do to take care of ourselves. My husband and I are separated mainly due to his lying about being in recovery when he's secretly relapsing and not telling any of his recovery team. His therapist has put him on probation and is wanting to see a certain amount of consistent recovery work for her to continue working with him. What's hard about this physical separation is that with our limited interaction, I have no idea if he's lying to me on our 2 to 3 times a week check-ins, what to look for and what he's doing, and what to look for to know he's doing the work.
Okay, well, I'm going to refer you back to a webinar I did on just recently. It might have even been the last webinar on how do you know if they're really doing the work. There are indicators and signs that let you know. Also, a couple of years ago, I did a webinar on signs that they are not in recovery. So educate yourself on that. And you're right, you have no way of knowing whether or not he's telling you the truth. So based on what you shared with me in your question, the fact that he's not been sharing with his recovery team when he relapses and he's lying, my assumption would be he's probably not telling you the full truth as well. And that is really hard, because I know as a betrayed partner, we really want them to be honest and transparent so that we can rebuild trust. So I realize that you have, limited physical interaction. And again, I think to create safety for you, the interaction needs to be in a therapist's office so that you've got somebody there. But also, and Tammy can speak to this, with somebody who's got this, type of behavior, oftentimes I think inpatient treatment is one of the best options, because you've got to break that, because you cannot recover if you're not willing to be completely honest with yourself and with other people. So I'll kind of turn that over to you, Tammy.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. My first thought was he of course is lying to you. He's lying to himself, you know. So if he's lying to everyone, he's lying to his therapy team. He's lying to his therapist, which we, you know, Dr. Rob always says we expect that, you know, on some level. But if he wanted to do the work, you know, he would be showing up and, you know, and talking about about the lying, you know. And so yes, residential treatment. I put a link, you know, seeking integrity, this is the work that the team does. You know, this is the only thing. We're not trying to do 100 different things. 14, 21, or 28-day length of stay. I will tell you from just the snippet I'm reading, he would not be a 14-day client. You know, it's that level of help. But to be like, read the endorsements on our website. Those are all unsolicited. You know, people wrote back in gratitude, and we then would say, may we share this anonymously on our website? Yes. You know, this is stuff not just from the addicts, but from partners who are going like, I did not expect that he could actually change. You know, I have hope for the first time. So this is really challenging. But when the therapist has put him on probation and he's still not getting it, when he's lying to, you know, when he's lying about everything, you know, that level of denial, you know, there's a reason for it. And I'm not going to, you know, make excuses or whatever, but you know, that's deep-seated stuff, and to get underneath all of that, you know, takes a higher level of help. And you know, there is no more expert treatment for these issues than seeking integrity. So you can reach out, and I'm happy to help. TAMI@seekingintegrity.com. And I'll tell you what, you know, and I'm not saying this lightly or tritely, but we've had, you know, partners that have gone, you know, residential treatment or divorce. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep hoping, you know, and living in limbo. And I'm not saying you're there, and I'm not saying you should be. I'm just saying, you know, nothing changes if nothing changes. And unfortunately, an addict who's caught up in this stuff and is not getting it, you know, then it may be, you know, a higher level of help. One more idea. Dr. Rob does a one-time 2-hour expert consultation with couples. And if people are stuck, he's really good at seeing through the BS. That could also be an option. It's via Zoom. He does them with couples all around the world. So consider that too. So I'm glad you're here holding the boundaries for you. But I would just expect, you know, that the check-ins, you know, they're not. I love that Debbie said do it with a therapist, because I'm sure that those are glossed over. Um, so the next question, betrayed partner. I already tried to do a therapeutic in-home separation, but my addict couldn't agree to some boundaries. I plan to move forward with divorce. How do I deal with feelings of guilt? He has CPTSD and no self-compassion. I feel really bad about leaving, even though I know it's best for me. Oh, that is so hard.
Yeah, that's really hard. um, so again, I hope you've got the support that you need on this. Um, and I recognize that it sounds to me like you're a very empathic, caring individual based on the question and how you worded it. Um, and I'm hoping that your partner has his own therapist and his own group, but you have no control over that. I think for you, it's getting the support that you need so you can work on even separating out if are you feeling guilt because you're doing something wrong, or are you feeling shame, right?
Mm,
And shame is I'm really internalize it like I am bad for doing this, as opposed to I did something bad, which is about behavior, and the other one is about the actual essence of who I am. So, working with a therapist on that. I'm also a firm believer in that each of us have choice. And so, even your partner has a choice to work on their complex PTSD and their lack of self compassion. What I would encourage you to do is to focus on that self compassion piece as well. So you might want to look at the self-compassion workbook that Kristen Neff has written. It is one that you can kind of journal in and really focusing on you as you are moving out of this relationship, right? Keeping your shame down of somehow I am doing, I am bad for doing this. And offsetting it, or I feel like the remedy to shame is self-compassion. So doing some of that self-compassion work, even doing it with your therapist, I think is going to help you in that part of feeling really bad about leaving. And you're right, it's sometimes really difficult when we have to make a decision that is going to save us, knowing that it's going to be difficult on somebody we love. So I do want to validate how difficult that is, but you do matter, and your mental and physical and emotional health, it's okay to focus on it. It's okay to take care of you.
And it is really painful to watch somebody who chooses not to, you're throwing lifelines out and they're choosing to go, yeah, no, I'm over here drowning, and I'm going to keep doing that. And I'm sorry. I've been in recovery a long time. I've watched lots of people choose to do that, when they've been given options. So I did there's a moving on alone drop-in group for betrayed partners on Thursdays. The focus is a little different. It's, somebody who's been left or has one foot out the door. So the focus isn't about how do we, fix this relationship, how do we, whatever. So that one might be something for you to consider. And then the Empowered Women's Retreat. We've had partners who have left. We've had partners who were widowed and then had discovery, and then people who are, working on staying in the relationship. But that is about, healing for the partners, and is not about, focusing on a relationship or whatever too. So there's some options for you that I think could be, useful on this journey. And then I typed in an answer, and I should have read it, but it was like, how do we pick, the betrayed partner work group or the boundaries work group? You are welcome to do both at the same time. There is a touch on boundaries in the betrayed partner work group that starts on the 10th. That said, that's kind of a foundational, like, what is sex addiction? How do we communicate? All of those things. Often people are like, I don't even know what I'm up against. And so having that, foundation can be really useful, and knowing you're not alone. If you're struggling with internal or external boundaries, I say all the time, Debbie is the queen of healthy boundaries, and she can help you identify what the boundaries are. So if it feels more like I'm struggling with boundaries rather than, I just need to know what I'm up against and how to navigate this. But again, you are welcome to do both. So that's, that's the information, about those. So thank you for the great questions. Great topic as usual. Join us again a couple weeks from now. Matt Wheeler will be back next week. We will have more for you. Keep coming back. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.